Appreciate that. It's nice to have someone that like guides. As a director, I'm always, the person having to like make sure that people are doing the things right and like they know what they're supposed to say, and the writer. And so yeah, I totally.
So you're the director, the writer.
I usually, director, writer. I usually act in whatever I make. I produce it. Like producing is all of the boring like logistical stuff that it takes to get you to when you actually direct, write, and act. So I do a lot of producing. I'm a certified Steadicam operator, which is like a big metal like exo vest that you wear with a spring-loaded arm, and it lets you hold like 70-pound camera packages and keeps it still while you like walk around with it. So I do that. I'm. When you grow up like making movies as a kid, and you're like, I always had like massive visions. There's not really anybody to be like, oh, I need like someone to edit this film, but none of the other 9-year-olds in the neighborhood are that driven or that organized to know how to edit or shoot. So I'm like, all right, fine. I'll learn how to edit it. I'll learn how to shoot it. I'll learn how to direct it. I'll learn how to act in it and write it just so I can make the movie. Like as a kid, I always wanted to be the next Jackie Chan or Jason Statham or Jet Li. In fact, that was my intro to filmmaking, was watching the fight scenes from Jason Statham movies on YouTube on our computer. And like I would literally have these, I would transcribe the choreography. I'd like write down like, okay, he's doing this move and he's answering with this. And I'd write it down, I'd study it, I'd practice it, and I'd try to like recreate those fights. And that was kind of my origin of filmmaking, was going to Jason Statham fight school.
At the age of 9.
Probably, it might have been earlier, but because I remember like when I bought some of the books, and thankfully I have like early movies, like very early, not good, like not anything I would show anyone in good conscience. In fact, I was just at the explosion shoot that I was doing. We're making another action movie, and it's some friends of mine who are probably my earliest collaborators as filmmakers, Josh and Zach Comfort. And so, we were watching movies afterwards that we made like 14 years ago. And like, they're so cringeworthy, but it's cool to see like how far, I've come, how far they've come. Because all that to say, I basically had to learn. If I wanted something in my movie, I was responsible for it. There was no one else who was going to be like, oh yeah, I'll learn the special effects, or yeah, I know how to do that. I just learned it, and then I would teach it to someone else so they could execute it while I was, in front of the camera or behind the camera.
That's essentially what I do with this podcast. Like, I learned how to do the audio. I'm learning how to do the video, staging it, like everything. It's just like me, the graphics. And I mean, it's time consuming, so I can't even imagine with filmmaking.
Well, that was my biggest, like, the thing that I'm mastering now, because now that I've, I know how to direct a really good film, I'll still be getting better. I know how to write really well. I'm still getting better. The thing that is the hardest to learn, or unlearn rather, is how to, how to delegate, I guess you could say is the best word, or, because you sacrifice a bit of control and a bit of like the excellence, and, finding the people who are as good at their thing as I am at mine, or as driven at their thing as I am at mine, has always been the biggest challenge of mine. I kind of have like the joke of that part in at the end of some Marvel movie where Thanos, he puts on the Infinity Gauntlet, he goes, fine, I'll do it myself. Like, that's most of my filmmaking career.
It's tough. It's tough, especially in a creative industry where you have a certain vision and now you have to trust someone else to match that vision that you have.
Yeah, I've found for me, like, I like when people add to the vision. Like, I don't want my final film to be just like exactly what I saw in my head, because it's kind of boring, and it's nothing bigger than me. I think the challenge is that I have standards. Like, I have standards of excellence and quality that I hold myself to, and it's finding people who match those standards that's the hard part. Like, I love collaborating on vision. I know so many really brilliant people who just have so many great ideas, and I've worked with them, and there's a story from Beyond the Lake where that like came to a T and it was perfect. And thankfully all those collaborators also hold themselves to high standards, but more and more it's just harder to find people who hold themselves and to a rigorous standard of excellence, and if they don't, you see it. And I don't want like my vision executed poorly, because then it ruins it for a lot of people. It's like it's stained. So it's like, all right, if it's necessary, like, I will do it, even if it takes me twice as long, or, even if I don't have the time. What we make in film is going to last forever. It's not like theater where you can kind of go back and do it the next night. Like, once you have something on camera, like, that lasts forever. So it better be as good as it can possibly be.
Especially with the internet. As soon as you click enter, boom, the world can see it.
And with the rate at which like technology and equipment gets better and better and better. Like, now, anything you make, no matter if it could be perfect, it's going to look aged in 15 years. And so the execution of whatever you've done has to be flawless. Like there are action movies from like the 70s and the 80s that, you know, even though they look dated, we still watch them and we still consider them excellent because they used the tools that they had and they executed their vision perfectly. And it was more than just like a technical demo. Like I think of now like the action movies we're seeing now, whether it's, you know, whatever the latest Marvel 79 is, or Fast and Furious 13. I wonder how well those are going to age, not because, you know, they're not technically, but because like, is there something there more than just the spectacle of what we're seeing that's going to make it significant in 30, 40 years? Like I watched First Blood for the first time like a week ago, like Rambo First Blood. And, you know, the cinematography is obviously it's older, like it looks old, you know, there's that classic 80s movie. But what's neat about that movie is it's more of a character study on the effects of the Vietnam War. And it was an important movie in that sense because it showed you what it was like to be a soldier of you come home, but you know, you're still at war because now it's like the way that society treats you. And, you know, even though you were just doing your job, they're calling you baby killer and, you know, they don't want you in their town. And so that movie said something more than just here's a cool action movie. And that's why it endures. And I look at a lot of movies today and I don't really see that. I see them like they're trying to be as big as they can and have as much spectacle and as much effects and as much, you know, clever, snappy dialogue. But there's nothing below the surface.
That's the Fast and the Furious movies. I like started with a cool storyline, and then they were just like, how many special effects can we fit in one movie?
Yeah,
you're jumping off a car, off a bridge, and catching a body coming. Like,
and to give credit where credit is due. A lot of people like to, you know, crap on the Fast franchise. Those movies serve a purpose. The way I see it's like, for one, the guys who, you know, obviously John Wick, right? Everyone loves John Wick.
Oh, come on.
So the guys that made John Wick are Chad Stahelski and David Leitch. They're two former stunt guys. They started a company called 8711 Action Design. And what they do mainly is they second unit direct, which is, so the Avengers movies are directed by, oh goodness, I'm blanking on the names. They made Community, and now I can't remember. Not Joss Whedon. He was the old guy. Goodness gracious.
That guy, that other guy.
There's two of them. There's like, oh my God, I look like such an idiot right now. They directed Winter Soldier. They started in Community. Okay.
It'll come back in the mid-episode. Well, I bet.
The main Avengers movies are directed by those two guys. Anytime you have like actors talking or dialogue scenes, they direct it. But anytime you have an action scene, like a lot of stuff being exploded or there being stunts or fight scenes or action, those scenes are actually directed by different people. And that's called second unit directing, where they bring in other directors who specialize in a certain kind of scene and they direct those scenes. So all of the action in the Fast and the Furious franchise, in the Avengers movies, in a lot of like main stage quote unquote action movies are directed by Chad Stahelski and David Leitch, those guys from 8711. John Wick was one of the first movies that they made themselves. So that was like an 8711 original production and we loved it. Now what's great is that you would never have seen John Wick, and it never would have been as good as it was without the Fast and the Furious and without all those throwaway action movies, because those movies, they give the 8711 guys kind of like a chance to work out. Like they work out on Fast 9, 10, 11. They're like, all right, what can we do and what can we practice for our next John Wick movie? In fact, the Bourne trilogy, like Jason Bourne, really great movie, such iconic fighting. That was when Filipino martial arts first kind of came into play in mainstream cinema. They were testing out that type of fighting style on kind of like a throwaway Jason Statham movie called Safe. Like very small. I think it might have even been direct to video. But the point is, the improvised weapons and the type of fighting and the kind of even some of the gun fu from John Wick, they were testing that out on these little movies that we would call like, oh, it's just cheap action. Well, yes, it is. And it kind of gave them a chance to try things that then they could bring in and perfect into those movies that we love, like John Wick and like Atomic Blonde and like, you know, whatever they're making now. So the Fast and the Furious movies, not only are they like the fast food of the film industry, like you can't feed 8 billion people a day without them, but they give the artists a chance to like try things and experiment, and then they bring that into those action that we love.
In the fitness world, that would be the warm-up sets to your working sets. Mm-hmm. Well, for those who don't know, this is Dominic Porcari, and he's on the Relentless project. I appreciate you
already somehow.
Look at that.
Yeah.
So we work hard in here. We bring blood out, blood, sweat, and tears.
Pumping already. Yeah,
no, that's awesome. I appreciate you for jumping on.
Thanks, man. But before we start though, this is I'm not gonna lie, it's feeling kind of formal. Do you mind if we like just kind of bring it down a bit?
Yeah, the spirit of TRP is like raw. Like,
Yeah.
this is a little crazy. I mean, I enjoy it.
Yeah.
I'm like, but yeah, look, can we
this
simmer it
feels
down a bit?
how about it? We'll see if we can fix this. Ah, that's better. Nice basement for you.
More my speed.
Yeah, it's less pretentious, you know.
You are now tuning in to the Relentless Project. Real people, real stories, real life.
So you were going off. You obviously know a lot about filming. So before we get into that, like, who is Dominic and how did you even get into this industry? This isn't an industry you just stumble upon.
Yeah.
It takes grit and relentlessness.
It does
Dun,
indeed.
dun, dun, dun. So, like, tell us a little bit about how you got into this industry.
Yeah, so I'd always wanted to make movies as a kid. Like, I thought, I grew up watching, you know, Jason Statham and Jackie Chan and Scott Adkins and Michael Jai White do fight scenes, and I thought, like, oh, that would be great to make action movies, like, for a living. But I was either smart enough or cynical enough as even a young kid to know, like, oh, artists don't make any money. I don't want to get a film degree that costs $200,000 and then have to work food service for the rest of my. There's nothing wrong with food service. I've done it too, but like, you know,
Same.
I didn't want that to be like all I could do. And so I spent my entire scholastic life preparing for an engineering career. I told myself that I would become a mechanical engineer and I would use that to like self-fund my filmmaking education. And I was good at it too. Like, it wasn't just like, oh, I'll do this. You know, I was captain of the robotics team. I was a grade ahead in math and physics. I played with Legos and Connects as a kid. Like, I was serious.
Dude, I did
Yeah.
too. Maybe I have it in there.
You got it in
Maybe
you,
I
yeah.
have it in there.
And yeah, like, I always told myself, like, I'd love to do this full time, but again, I didn't want to be a starving artist, so I just figured that was my path. And then it was April of my senior year of high school, and I was already, at this point, I was already accepted to Penn State and Virginia Tech for mechanical engineering. I just had to decide which one I was going to, and all the like the East Coast engineering schools that I applied to, I got into. And then a friend of mine who was like a prodigy student, she was applying for an MIT summer program that needed an application video, and she texted me. She's like, "Hey, they need a video. I have no idea what I'm doing. I know you like making movies. Can you help me out here?" I was like, "Oh, sure, yeah." So I wrote her a little video. I shot it, edited it, and kind of directed her to get her, you know, more kind of peppy on camera. Cause you know, some STEM people, they live in here and they don't have a lot going on out here. But, so I helped her kind of, you know, bring out her personality, and the video was great. And her parents loved it so much they paid me $300 for the video, like on the spot. Now,
First gig,
exactly. Now that's not a lot of money for a video like that, but as someone who'd never made money, I was like, whoa, this is weird. And it kind of threw me into a crisis there because, again, this is April of 2016. Like, I'm graduating in 2 weeks at this point from high school. And up to this point, my whole reason for not just pursuing film right off the bat was I don't want to be a starving artist. But now, as I'm sitting there, like, eating the Chipotle that I bought with some of the money that I got from this film, I'm like, I don't feel like a starving artist right now. I feel rather well fed. And so I said a prayer that night. I was like, listen, Lord, like, if this is what you want me to do, you got to tell me right now. Because again, this is April, and like, college application takes a long time. And the next morning I came downstairs and there was a thank you note on my desk from her dad with another $100 check in it. And I was like, all right, well, if that's not a
$4
sign,
bills, man.
I don't know what is. Yeah. And so at that point, I just kind of, and as you can imagine, I don't know if you have kids or not, but for those who do, it's every parent's dream for their engineering student of 18 years to suddenly say at the last minute, yeah, I want to major in film. Yeah. my mom, but they were like, oh, we were so close. But my dad said something that I'll never forget. He's like, listen, you have my full support on this as long as you promise to work as hard at filmmaking as you would have at engineering. As long as you do that, you know, you've got my full support. And I said I would. And so, yeah, I restarted the application process. I started looking for film schools, and I landed on Point Park University, which is a school in downtown Pittsburgh that had, it's a dance conservatory primarily, one of the top in the nation, but they had a pretty good filmmaking program with, you know, good student work and some good faculty. I could commute from home, and I knew that if I got a certain scholarship, I could graduate without any debt. So that was like the most important thing, especially for anyone going into the arts today, is to like put the money first, as in don't get yourself a degree that's going to put you $250,000 in debt. that, you're going to need to start paying off when, reality is with any art, you don't start making money till like 10 years into it anyway, serious money. But that's an aside. But yeah, all that to say, it was a application video and Chipotle that made me decide to be a filmmaker. And I tell that story and people are always like, oh, it must have been so nice to have such a clear sign of like what you're supposed to do. But the reality is it was not that. Like I was not, even with that like fleece and wool moment, I was still not sure. You don't spend your whole life preparing to do something only to make a complete 180 and just feel fine about it. And so I was thinking like, am I doing the wrong thing? Like I don't want to get behind the ball in engineering because, that kind of knowledge is perishable. I don't remember most of the stuff I learned in high school, physics 2 or calc 3. But
there's a Calc 3.
There's Calc 3.
I was gonna say I took Calc 2, and I felt like a genius when I was doing it.
And I think the moment that I started finding seeds of doubt as to whether I wanted to be engineer or not was when, infinity times 0 no longer equals 0 all the time. I'm like, okay, I don't like when 0 doesn't make something 0. I don't know what we're doing here. But anyway, I wasn't sure still, and so I made myself a promise. I was like, listen, I'm gonna do film. I'm gonna do this program for 1 year, as if it is my single God-given purpose on this earth. And if at the end of that 1 year I'm still unsure, I'll go back to engineering. But if I'm not, then I'll stay. And it took within 6 months, I was set. I was like, yeah, this is my calling. This is what I'm supposed to do. So like if I had advice for, people watching, maybe coming up through high school or about to graduate or even in college, who were like, what should I do? How do I find my purpose? How do I find my passion, my calling? Is do something, like whatever captures your imagination, your interest, do it for a year, 6 months, as if it is the thing that you're supposed to do. And you'll be shocked because then it becomes that, it starts with you. Like you do something as if it is your purpose, and then it becomes your purpose, and your body your mind follows suit.
It's all about staying on that path and becoming relentless in that pursuit. Because so did you ever encounter any failures? And I say that in air quotes because obviously you're here today, and we'll get into your film Beyond the Lake, which you started from a school project, and now you have a movie on Amazon Prime or YouTube. That's where I've been watching it. And it's
so you're one of the 3 YouTube sales we've had.
It's like the trailer. One thing, I judge a book by its covers. I try not to do that. I saw the trailer and I was like, okay, this it captured my attention.
Yeah.
And that movie, I haven't finished it yet, I'll be honest, but it captures the premise of this podcast. Like you have this guy, and from what I saw, without giving out too much information, because you guys should definitely watch it, you have this guy who wants to pursue music, it seems like, right? Mm-hmm. And he's encountering these failure moments to the point where he smashes his guitar. The thing he wants to go to, he gets rid of it. And I feel a lot of people don't reach their full potential because they smash their guitar. They reach that point where like, I can't do this, or this isn't for me, or I'm not getting the support from the person I love the most.
Right.
So this isn't for me. And they smash their guitar. And then for them, that's done. And that's why I'll leave it there. But there's always, if you continue to push forward for something long enough, you will find success in it.
Yeah.
It's overcoming those hurdles. And I was watching and I'm like, dude, there's so many things I can pull from this for life, for this podcast, for this episode. And quick question, is that a story of you in the sense of mechanical engineering? You smashed your guitar or for filmmaking, you reached this point where you're like, I can't do this. And you went a different route. Or
I mean, there's always no. That's why we make things, is to have multiple layers of interpretation. There's always, I put as much of me into my stories as I can. I think at the time it really, when I started writing it really kind of was exactly what the story is. I thought I had this person that I met that I really thought was going to like work out great, and we were going on dates and it was really great, and then just kind of got like the cold shoulder, the ghost, like out of nowhere, everything changed, and I just kind of like rocked me. And in real life, it was kind of the opposite, where like that happened, and then that summer I made like some of the best films I've made. Like all that summer I won like massive awards. But it got me thinking of the story of, if like we're all doing what we do for something or sometimes for someone, and the movie's an examination of like why doing things for someone isn't the best idea all the time, and you have to learn, like what's deeper than that. But to answer your question, yeah, I think it was just that relationship I had, or almost had, and then didn't go the way I thought it was, and I kind of wrote the movie to try to kind of find a way through that, or to find some order in that. Like that's, I think, what the best artists, storytellers, what have you, what they do is the world is chaos. We don't need movies or art to tell us that. And that's why I'm not a big fan of like movies that kind of leave you where they found you. Like we don't need a movie or a song to tell us that the world is an ugly place where things don't make sense and, dreams fall apart and people break. We need storytellers and artists to restore order with imagination, to go in there and take those shattered pieces, and build something new out of it. And, show like, okay, well, this still sucks what happened, but there is there's order in the chaos somewhere. And so I kind of wrote the movie as a way to find like some meaning, or to make something beautiful out of that. And I had a really interesting moment, I think last year, where in the movie, which if you've seen it, the main character, he's writing music as he's stumbling back into music, and as he does, he's writing songs to help him kind of process what he's going through and what's happening to him, and try to work through it, because that's kind of how he speaks. He's very good at speaking musically, but not like communication wise, and that feeds into his relationship troubles. But so he writes these songs, and we see him like taking these long bike rides at night as he's kind of like writing the songs in his head. And I remember when I was writing the movie, and when I was going through the inspirations for the movie, I would do that. I would take these long bike rides at night for hours, and I would just kind of listen to like some somber music, because that's what all moody early 20s artists do. We're super neurotic in that way. But I would do that. I would basically like listen till my AirPods died, and then I'd go home. And last year, I was back in Lakeside where we shot, and I decided I was feeling fine, but I took a bike ride, just like I used to, just like the movie. And instead, this time, I listened to the soundtrack for Beyond the Lake. Like I listened to the songs that I'd written for the movie that are on Spotify. And it was a really surreal moment, because now I was back where I was, but I was listening to, like, I was able to take that situation and make something beautiful out of it, and to make something that has some meaning, and to make something that, makes people really feel something. And that was a special moment, because I was seeing and hearing like the fruit of all the turmoil that I had to go through. And it was just a way of like telling myself like, okay, that sucked and that hurt, but you came out of it, you won, you didn't let it beat you. You were relentless enough, you kept going. And now, rather than something heartbreaking or something embarrassing, you have something beautiful and meaningful to show for it.
So did the soundtrack come before the visuals, or did you have the visuals kind of there before the soundtrack came?
Yes and no. I was writing the script first, and then I wrote because I knew that the music was going to be an integral part of the story. Like I didn't just want like, oh, let's pause for some music and then get back to the story. Like I wanted all the songs to progress the plot. And so I think the first song I wrote it's the second one you hear in the movie, where he's playing a song about essentially like the girl that broke his heart just happens to move into the small lakeside town that he moved to, and it's like a 0.001% chance of that happening. He's just kind of riffing on like, what are the odds?
Is that when she's in the car? And
yeah, so it's right after that. It's like when he's trying to like live his life, and she keeps on showing up, and he has to like hide because he doesn't want to like face her.
Dude, the visuals in that movie are like, I don't want to take anything away by saying for being like essentially an indie film or a small film.
It's a very indie film,
but I'm like, dude, this is a movie I'd see in theaters.
That was our goal. That was something that me and my director of photography, Ethan Lacey, who co-produced the movie with me and shot it with me, we talked about that extensively. Was, yeah, indie movies have a look, and was like, we do not want that look. And we took a lot of steps, even so much as like most indie movies, the way that the camera shakes has a look, because they're usually filming with tiny like handheld cameras. We literally added 40 pounds of steel to our camera package, just so that like it would have more inertia and it would move like a big Hollywood camera moved. Like we did a lot, and discussed the lighting and the visuals and how we were going to light it, how we were going to shoot, to make sure that it had the Hollywood look, and it looked like a $10 million movie.
What are some things you encountered, some setbacks or difficulties while filming this? Because it's one thing to shoot these independent, you say you do a lot of short film, and obviously you probably do a lot of like social media videos and stuff. What were some things you experienced throughout this process where you're like, dang?
Well, the biggest one was, originally the plan was to shoot this in June of 2020. I don't know if you remember what was happening in 2020 or not.
I vaguely remember the world shutting down.
We've repressed a lot of it. Yeah. COVID just hit right away. And I remember at that point it was like the Asian flu that was happening overseas and it wasn't happening. And then I remember it was at the end of March and I was at my school and that was when the dominoes started falling and okay, they announced we're not coming back this week. Then we're not coming back this month. And then, Pitt shut down. CMU shut down. Okay, they're shutting down this. And then by the end of the day, everything was halted. And I had assembled a full cast, a full crew of people I went to school with, to make the movie, to get everything shot. And I told them, listen, okay, there's a lot of uncertainty, but hey, yeah, they said it's only 2 weeks to slow the curve and then we'll be back to normal. That was what we were all told. That's what we all believed. And clearly that did not happen. And basically, yeah, we went from shooting in June of 2020. I kept on just kind of pushing it back a month at a time, thinking that, I was like, we got to stay ready. We got to stay ready so that we're ready to hit the ground running. And just over all that time of uncertainty and unease, people started dropping off hey, I just don't know if I can do this anymore. Or, hey, the schedule doesn't work out anymore. Hey, I've got elderly grandparents. I don't want to, risk getting them sick. So it got to the point that we ended up, I lost almost every single original member of the cast and crew. And I had to replace them with someone new because every single person, except for the lead actress, Allison Elaine, left the project. And so that was a huge hurdle. And then just keeping the enthusiasm going, over the summer, that was hard. Originally, I made a Kickstarter, this massive, intricate video. We're trying to raise $20,000 as some seed money for the movie just to get everything started. That launched, I think, at the end of April. And that, no one's going to donate to a film when they don't even know if they're going to have a job in 2 months. And so, all the money we had raised, we lost. So we had no money, no crew, no locations, really no prospects at all. And it was really just me being I'm not stopping, I don't know what it's going to look like, but it's going to look like something if I've got anything to say about it. Actually, I just kind of never really, whether it was arrogance, ignorance, or just obliviousness, I don't know what, but I was I'm going to keep making this movie. We're going to make it eventually with something, with some people, somewhere, somehow. Over the summer, I kept on tweaking the script and making it a little bit better. I got connected to some people who had funded some indie movies before. They gave me advice and later became investors, and that was huge. I had to recast the lead role 4 different times. We had 4 separate people go through the role of Joe Lakeman. Originally, it was going to be a friend of mine who I went to school with. He had to step off because of COVID. Then I switched to another guy from Pittsburgh that I'd acted with before. He somehow missed the point that it was a feature film. He thought it was a short film. I was like, brother, did you read the script? It's 90 pages. How do you think short out of that? So he stepped off. Then briefly, it was going to be me for a second because we were we can't keep recasting. What if I just do it? But I didn't want to do that because I knew I was going to have enough hats on my head already. I wanted to be able to focus on directing. And then I thought I'd found the guy, number 3. He was a musician and an actor from out in Wisconsin. He had the look, he had the hair, he could sing, he could play the guitar. He really vibed with the story. He connected to what we were trying to say. He's yeah, this is it. I'm great, we found him. So I booked him a plane ticket. I told him where he was going to be staying in Ohio. We were communicating. We were sharing ideas about the script. I was sending him music to practice, and then we were going to do 3 days of shooting in Pittsburgh just when we started the movie. And this is now we're in October, so June to October was however much that is. That's how much we had to push this movie back. And finally, we got off the ground near October or September. So it was the middle of September. We were going to shoot 3 days in Pittsburgh, and then come October, we were going to shoot the rest in Ohio, where the bulk of the movie takes place. And so I'm driving back from Ohio to shoot the Pittsburgh scene. So we're starting filming tomorrow. And I get a text, not a call, but a text from this guy who I'd hired. We had under contract, had his plane ticket. He said, hey, I can't do your movie. I got hit by a truck. That was it. That was all he said. And my first instinct as a human being was oh my God, are you okay? What happened? Are you okay? That was my first concern. And he didn't really respond. And that's when the producer and me started thinking okay, wait a minute. Who just gets hit by a truck the day before you're supposed to film a movie? And so I started kind of pressing a little more. I was I said, hey, can you send us your hospital bill for our insurance? Because one of the things you insure against in films is if something happens to your actor, you can't make the movie without them, so you don't want to lose money. So you insure people. Now, we were a very small movie. We didn't have that, obviously. But I needed to get some kind of confirmation from this guy. Are you pulling my leg? And he sent me some blurry photo of a paper with a bunch of numbers and no names or locations. And at that point, I'm all right, I think this guy's pulling. I think he's just trying to get out of his contract. And so now we are supposed to start shooting tomorrow. Cast and crew is flying in. We've rented thousands of dollars of gear. We had locations booked, and we have no lead actor.
Dude, that's wild.
And so I talked with, first like, okay, well, we have to shoot something. So we shot like the Pittsburgh section of that movie. We shot that with me as the lead role just to try it out. Like, all right, let's at least test the scene, see how it looks, see if it works. Just because we can't start with a false start like that. So we got some momentum going. It looked good. And then I had 2 weeks to find a new lead actor for this movie. And so I called a friend of mine from Los Angeles, and I was like, hey, man, you're more connected to like the young actor scene than I am. I'm looking for someone who's mid-20s, tall, can sing, play the guitar, and is free for the month of October. Do you know anybody? And he's like, I'll ask around. And he sent me a few names, one of whom was a brilliant Broadway actor named David Sokolar, who toured with the national cast of the musical Waitress. In fact, I saw him in Company, which was in Pittsburgh, like 2 nights ago. So I just got to catch up with him. But he sent me this Broadway actor who he's like, at this point, because of COVID, Broadway was closed. And so there are all these amazing actors just sitting at home, twiddling their thumbs, like, get me in a creative space. And so I connected with David. I told him about the movie. I told him like what it was going to be. Here's how much, you'll be paid. And he did an audition for me. He sang a song for me. And I was like, yeah, I think this guy will work. And 2 weeks later, he was sleeping in this basement as we then reshot the Pittsburgh stuff and headed up to Ohio. And he was perfect. He couldn't have asked for a better person for that role. He had such great chemistry with the actress, with the crew. So that was one of the few cases in which COVID actually played to our, or I'm sorry, that's the thing about Relentlessness. Nothing ever plays to your advantage. You have to find the advantage in whatever happens and, play that. Like if you're clever, if you know how a mousetrap works, you can use it as a springboard. It's the same thing of there was nothing beneficial about COVID-19 from any standpoint, but there's always a silver lining and finding like, okay, like how can I use this to my advantage? Like what are my assets here? What's working for me? Finding that throughout the filmmaking process was probably the most where I grew the most, was learning how to do that, getting better at finding, okay, how do I use this bad situation to my advantage? How do I make it better rather than let it get worse?
I'm a huge believer in you find what you're looking for. And in the premise of in life is a constant battle. It's a constant struggle. And if you find a hardship and you're looking at the negatives and the bads, you're going to find it and it's going to compound. But if you switch your mindset, and it's easier said than done, but if you have that mindset of like, what can be gained from this, you will find good in just about everything that happens. And COVID was a tough time for me too. I was going through I was isolated, I was by myself, I was going through a personal situation, but that's where I found, old me would have lashed out, and I was really struggling with myself and my mental health, and I'm like, no, like this is good. This is the reset that I need, that I've been asking for. I like to keep busy. I take on many ventures, and this was like a halt. Like figure your stuff out right now.
Yeah.
And it was a good reset for me. And I try to do that in everything I do. Like what can I gain from this? I know I'm losing this. I know this sucks. I know this hurts, but what can I gain? And if you switch your mindset to that, which you did, and that, your actors are bailing out. You got all this money invested and time invested in just yourself, like you've spent years trying to make this, and then you're like, it's go time. I got hit by a truck. It's like, really?
Yeah.
That's what I need right now. And
yeah.
So how was it working with, once you're going, you're filming, like how was it working with these actors you've picked to kind of encompass this vision that you have? Like how was that process for you?
It was actually spectacular. It was interesting because the two leads in the movie, that you have Allison Elaine plays the lead actress, and David Sokolar plays Joe. Allison was the oldest, not age-wise, but like the most original remaining. She was the only member of the original crew. So she was like, other than me, the person who had been with the project the longest. And then you had David, who had been with the project the shortest. Like 2 weeks ago, he didn't even know who I was, and now he's acting. But this was like, I had done a lot of prep as a director, which is different than being a filmmaker. Like a director, there's a certain way in which you have to talk to actors, you have to communicate, and communicate your ideas in a way that lets them get there organically versus, you never want to tell an actor be more angry or be louder, because then they start okay, it for an untrained actor, it can turn them into like a caricature. You become a caricature of an angry person, or you look like someone who's trying to be angry. But if I tell you, like, I want you to like break those mirrors, well, there's no mirrors there, but it's like, I want you to break that window with your voice, or I want you to make him take a step back with your lines. That becomes a physical thing and actually makes you like a lot more organic. So there's a lot of things like that that you want to like kind of say to people, like, you know, communicate with. Then there's a lot of directing that's like analyzing and breaking down a script, like finding the subtleties and the subtext within a script and bringing that to the surface so that the actors know what they're playing, and it's more than just the words on the page. There's a lot of that. And so I had done a lot of training, done a lot of reading coming up to it. And I remember the first day we were shooting, I'm like, oh, this is it. Like, you know, these two know, like, they're legit. They know if I'm a hack director, they're going to know. But we had a great first day, a great few days. And I remember a few days later, like, I'd say, like, jokingly, I was like, to David, because he had never done a film before. I was like, so how is it working with a film director? He's like, dude, you're a dream. He's like, you're better than some of the Broadway directors I've worked with. I was like, oh, man, thank you.
And you're like, yeah, I'm glad, because it's all like, what did you learn throughout that process? Obviously, you learned a lot, but like, what's something that stuck with you that you use still today?
Well, there's so many.
Oh, I can't even imagine, man. Just working with people, you know.
I think in terms of because we were on the Relentless project, one of the the end, you haven't seen the end, so I'm like, there's a great story involving the end of the film, but I don't want to spoil that. But essentially, the way that the ending worked was I had written the film in March of 2020, so it was a pretty quick project, and over the summer, I had been like tweaking and adjusting and making a lot of scenes better, you know, to get like the movie better. And then when we were on set, we were doing improvs. We did some like on the day rewrites. Like there were certain scenes just like, this doesn't work. We got to rewrite it. We got to do something different. I'd done a lot of that throughout the process, but the problem was that the ending scene never changed. Like all of the things leading up to it were getting adjusted and rewritten and reshaped, but the end scene, the thing that like all the stuff is adding up to build, just stayed the same. And if you have a super long math equation and you change all the 9s to 4s and the pluses to minus and you add all these things in, it's going to change like the equals. And I hadn't adjusted for that. So we shot the ending of the movie basically as it was in March, and it didn't reflect all the ways that the script had evolved and changed. So when we got to the edit, and at this point we're past our reshoots, we're past our pickups, I was like, well, this is a nice ending, but it doesn't fit this movie. Like, this is a great ending, but not for this movie. Like, the movie had become something else, something more complex, something more intelligent. And so now I'm in the space of like, I have to find a way to write a new ending only with footage that I already have. Like, I can't reshoot with actors. They're back on Broadway. You know, it's winter now where we shot, like, it doesn't match. So I'm like, well, shoot, like, what do I do? And so I'll back up now. So that was like a year after we finished shooting. Go back to the very first day in Ohio when we're shooting. So we shot in Pittsburgh and we moved it to Ohio for the bulk of the shoot. We're on Lake Erie. And it's our first day of shooting. It's the end of the day. We're shooting this little simple scene on the lake. The scene didn't make the cut. Basically, like, Allison takes a picture and interrupts, you know, Joe's picture. But we're shooting this. Like, it's beautiful. It's like at 71 degrees. There's a gentle breeze. There's kids laughing and the sun's going down. It's like a dream. And everyone's just like, this is the most peaceful, like, beautiful place ever. In Lakeside, Ohio, where we shot it, is that beautiful. It's a great spot. So we roll the last shot, get it. Our assistant director's like, all right, cut. He's like, all right, guys, that's a wrap on day one of Beyond the Lake. And at that very moment, the sonorous melody of Amazing Grace starts floating over the water. And we turn and look out of the lake. And on the edge of the dock, there's a guy in a kilt playing Amazing Grace on a set of bagpipes against the sunset. Like, right as we stop shooting, that kicks off. And we're like, what a christening of this movie.
Yeah,
like, what a good omen. So a couple days later, I'm biking through Lakeside. Like, I'm on the way back to the crew house. And I'm like, I swear I hear bagpipes again. And I start following the sound. And eventually I find that guy. He's practicing in the woods. He's like, I find his bagpipes there. And I introduced myself. I said, hey, you know, I told him like our experience. Like, we were shooting this movie. We saw you on the dock. It was great. That was awesome. He's like, oh, thank you. And we had a kind of a pause. And I was like, hey, you want to be in our movie? Like, we have a free evening tonight. He's like, sure. I don't know how to act. I'm like, no, don't worry. I was like, meet us at the dock at 5. We're going to write a little scene and we'll figure it out. It'll be great. And so I told the actors what we were doing. And essentially we just added this little scene where Joe and Allison, they're both kind of going through their own personal struggle at a certain point in the movie. They go down to the lake and they see a guy playing Amazing Grace on the bagpipes, and they each kind of get a little bit of like hope from that. And that's all the scene is. And I thought like, okay, if we use it, great. If not, no big deal. It's cool that we have it. So the original, so that was cool. And the original rough cut of the film was very long. And so that scene hit the cutting room floor almost instantly, and I kind of forgot about it. But now I'll go back to the edit. So now I am, a couple months away from when the film is supposed to be done, and I have an ending that doesn't work, and I have no ability to make something new or to film something new. And so I spent a whole month in this basement going through 32 terabytes of footage, just looking for anything. An average iPhone is like 256 gigabytes. So that's 120 iPhones, I think, worth of footage.
I was just looking at hard drives because I need more, and they're like 64 terabytes. It's like huge one. I'm like,
so going through days of footage, just looking for anything like, okay, can I make like some kind of avant-garde artsy ending? I'd be happy with anything. Like, what can I use to write a new ending somehow? And eventually I come back to that bagpipe scene, the thing that hit the deck almost instantly. And I realized, like, wait, if I combine this scene with some car shots from scene 86 that we didn't use, plus, and then I edit Allison out of this half of that frame to make it look like she left and Joe's there, and then we put this scene afterwards, so it makes it look like she'd come back. Basically, though I added this whole scene onto the film with footage that I had from the bagpipe scene to basically add a new ending where it looks like a character leaves and then chooses to come back, and they share like one last glance across the water, and that's how the movie. And it's a great ending. Like it's just it's satisfying, and you can tell there's resolution, but it's just open enough that it's not like a too heavy-handed of an ending, but it's a great ending. All I have to say.
I need to finish this movie.
Then the best song is at the end too. There's one called "Stay," but all I have to say. It was just a matter of like, okay, I've got to find something to make this work. And it was just a matter of, looking for anything I can use at all, and trying to have to really think laterally and think outside the box. Because with that bagpipe scene, the only footage that didn't make it into the film was the actual bagpipe guy. Like, I used all of the shots of the actors from that scene combined with other things to make it look like they're looking at each other when they're actually looking at somebody else. And so I think to answer your question of like what did I learn that I still use, editing is such a powerful thing. It's so much more than just dragging clips into place. Like there's a quote I'm fond of. It says, editing is the actual baking of the film process. Everything else is just shopping for ingredients. And learning how to think laterally as an editor is such a great skill I think everyone should have, and not just think like, oh, well, someone else is going to edit this film. It's like, no. You have such an opportunity to make things mean something else or something more than what you had on set in the edit. So that was a big lesson, was, learning how to think laterally. There's different ways that you have to approach a feature film versus a short film. Like, when you make short films, it's 3 days. You can get away with sleeping like 3 hours a night and barely eating and just, putting all of your effort into this short film, because then you can crash over the weekend and, your body will balance. But that's a sprint. Whereas a feature film's a marathon. Like, you have to actually have good work habits and, make a point of getting enough sleep and make sure that you're eating and hydrating and like staying mentally healthy. If you have like a little beef with somebody, you can just kind of shove that down on a short film, but over 30 days, it's going to come out. So you have to learn how to manage conflict and how to resolve things and how to have healthy communications, that things never get to a boiling point or a breaking point. Like, I got into, some fights with Ethan when he was like, he wanted to do work that he wanted to do prep work on our day off. And I was like, no. Like, these days off are holy. They need to stay that way, because if we get into the habit of taking away our rest, it's just going to hurt our performance down the line. So having to learn how to, manage your time and manage everything that happens off camera as well. That was huge. I mean, there was drama that happened, just like it does on every film set, that happened like behind the scenes that I wish I would have handled better. And now I go into, shoots differently and thinking about things differently of, okay, like, how am I going to talk to this person, or I'm going to address this before it happens. A lot of stuff like that. There's, of course, film techniques for, shooting, at daytime to make it look like it's nighttime, or shooting at nighttime to make it look like it's daytime. I learned a lot about music as I learned how to like write music for the film. I got to work with a great composer named James Warren Morris, who he did a lot of the orchestration for the opening of the new James Bond movie. Like, he's the guy when they recorded it in Spain. He's like recording, he's conducting the symphony in Spain, like with the MIDI that got from Hans Zimmer. That might have been Lauren Balfe, I forget. But so I worked with a lot of people who were better at their thing than I was at it. And that was great. I got to learn a lot about just acting and what goes through an actor's head. Working with David, I got to learn a lot about music from James, and there are a lot of great, great moments like that. And there's so many lessons that I don't even mentally register now. They're just the way I think. And I think that's the biggest, takeaway is you want it to be automatic. You don't want to have to think like, oh, I learned this on when this happens, so now I'm going to act like, if a fighter had to think like, oh, I have to raise my hand and angle my head like this every time someone throws a jab, he's going to get knocked out quick, because it has to be automatic. You can't think about, oh, I learned this. It just has to be a reflex. So yeah, Beyond the Lake was about 4 years ago at this point for me, from when we shot it. So most of the stuff I've learned it's a reflex now, and I couldn't even tell you, like what I learned from that versus just how I operate now.
No, that's good stuff. And like one of the things that makes a great leader is someone who can surround themselves by people who are better and allow them to do what they do. And I think we struggle with that a lot, especially like in law enforcement. A leader is seen as someone who has the highest rank. But that's not necessarily true, because as soon as you have someone below you who's doing something better than you and you want to excel in that, we get this conflict, and the personality clashes and egos. And so it's awesome that you're able to like, hey, that's your thing. I'm trusting you to do it and run with it. And you surround yourself by people who are good. That actor, to come in 2 weeks and just take the full run. I don't even know. I can't remember what I did yesterday, let alone a 90-page script, which it's funny because as a kid, I always wanted to be an actor. And then you start to find out what it all entails, and I'm like, I just want to be in front of a camera and be me. And it's like,
well, it's funny. That's another reason that I became a filmmaker, is because I wanted to be an actor too. I wanted to be a movie star, but again, none of the other 9-year-olds in the neighborhood were organized enough to make a movie. So I was like, all right, fine. I'll learn how to do the filmmaking and the directing and the editing and the shooting and the writing, just so that I could have a chance to be in front of the camera. And I just kind of kept doing that because it's what I had the control over. Like, being an actor is rough if you're just an actor, because you could be the best actor in the world, but you're basically at the mercy of if someone is making a film that you happen to be right for. Like, you spend a lot of time once you graduate as an actor just not working, because your skill set is, once all of the millions and millions of things and logistics have been assembled and it's been funded and it's been organized and all the pre-production has gone through and it's gotten through pre-production, it's gotten to set, like, that's when the actor shines. But there's so many things that have to happen before you get there that, it's a daunting thing as an actor to just have the courage to wait for that and to hope for that it's going to come. And I think that's why I kept on doing filmmaking, was because I wanted the illusion of control. Like, I wanted to be like, well, I don't want to have to wait for someone's permission to act or to be a movie star. I want to just make the movie now. So let me learn how to make it. And that's what we're going to do.
You ever need a 230-pound tattooed bearded guy? I know someone. What are some of the themes from Beyond the Lake that you can pull into everyday life? Like, well, first of all, what is the theme of Beyond the Lake without spoiling it?
Yeah. So
what do you do? Like, how does it apply to life?
So the theme of Beyond the Lake is sometimes good things fall apart so that better things fall together. And that's, you could describe every single thing that happened throughout the movie with that idea of, bad things happen. And we've been talking about this, the whole time, is bad things are going to happen. And you can see that as, oh, this is horrible and I'm losing, I'm regressing, I'm moving away from the life I want. Or you can see this as, okay, this is falling apart. It's clearing the way for this to be better. That's the biggest theme of Beyond the Lake that I strive to have in my own life. Even on the most recent shoot that I did last weekend, there was a special effects shot at the end that I in multiple ways, I messed it up twice in a row. Like, we were trying to get it for 30 minutes and I realized what I did wrong. It's like, guys, sorry, my bad. I fixed it. And then I messed up the camera and it didn't record. And like, I was just so mad at myself for like an hour. Then I just had to be like, all right, you know what? This shot was great. Let's take this opportunity to make it better. So I went back to the shot list. I was like, all right, every single one of these shots, how can I make it 50% better? How can I add some energy to it? Did that. I was like, all right, this explosion, we used 2 pounds of tannerite. Let's use 3 pounds next time. Let's make it even better. This good thing fell apart. Let's make a better thing take its place. And that is a choice. Like, you have to say to yourself, like, yeah, I am choosing to see this as an opportunity for improvement rather than, a deficit. That's a big thing. Themes. Sorry, repeat the question. You said themes of Beyond the Lake.
Like, themes of Beyond the Lake, and how does that apply to your life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the biggest one, I think. There's plenty of It's funny. I wrote the film like as like we talked about, kind of a moody young 20s artist that's very like self-obsessed and self-focused. And I've always had the goal of like, I want to tell a story of healing. I want to show someone who like gets over this, who's able to come out better than they were when they came in. Like I'm not one of those people that just likes, I call it sadness pornography, when a movie is sad just for the sake of being depressing and there's nothing really like redeeming about it, or there's nothing that like makes you want to be a better person or strive for something. I never wanted to make that. I never want to make that kind of movie. But even still, like there were a lot of things that I realized, looking back on it now, like I'm like, I don't necessarily agree with that part of the movie or like that idea in this one scene. I wouldn't handle that personally that way. So, but thankfully at the core is that idea of, sometimes good things fall apart so that better things can fall together, and how, it's not okay to just stay broken. Like, there's this idea, especially in modern like self-help and mental health culture, like, oh, it's okay not to be okay, or there's beauty in being broken. And I understand the intention there is that you don't have to, if you are down, you don't have to kick yourself for being down. Like you don't have to punish yourself. You're already low enough. You don't have to punish yourself for whatever has brought you down here. But you don't want to stay there. Like this thing we call falling down. This thing we call falling is not the falling down, but the staying down. And there's beauty in being broken. Well, not necessarily. There is beauty in repairing something that's broken, and being broken gives you the opportunity to reinvent yourself and to find, something stronger. Like you were talking about, COVID really forced you to kind of look yourself in the mirror and say, okay, who do I want to be now, and build something back from the pieces. One of the best stories of Beyond the Lake is, you mentioned the film starts off with a guy smashing his guitar. And so shooting that shot, it was always the plan to make, that was the first shot of the movie, and it's the very last thing we filmed. So we did the entire shoot up to that point, because at that point it was me, my DP Ethan, and David. We were the only crew left there. Everyone else had kind of slowly gone home as they were no longer needed. And so like it's just us. And my plan was I had lined up these 3 like cheap kind of broken guitars from all over Sandusky to buy for like, $50, and then we'll do 3 takes of it with 3 different guitars. So it's like a silhouette. That was the plan. But on the day we're supposed to shoot, all of a sudden things start falling through, and I get a call from one person and say, hey, that guitar I said I had, I don't have it anymore. I looked in my attic, I can't find it. Someone else texts me, they're like, hey, I found it. I'm actually not willing to sell it anymore. I'm going to keep it. It's like, oh shoot. Well, still one guitar. It's like, hey, just to confirm, you have a tan 6-string cutaway acoustic, right? They're like, yes, we do. I'm like, okay, can you send me a picture? Like, yeah, they sent me a picture of a tan 6-string cutaway acoustic guitar, because it has to match the guitar that he's using in the film prior. Like it has to look like the same guitar. These people show up an hour before we're supposed to leave with a black 12-string dreadnought, meaning full body guitar. I'm like, this is not what you said. This doesn't match the film. This is not what we said you had. This is not the picture you sent me. They're like, oh, we didn't think it mattered. And so now we are like, David's going home tomorrow. He's going back to New York. We're like, we've got 6 hours left to film the catalyst of the entire movie, and we don't have a guitar. And the only guitar that matches is the one that I have, like my personal guitar, which was a gift from my dad, a Christmas gift. I've got so many memories with it. And I went to music stores. I went everywhere. I hit up Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, eBay. I could not find anything that matched. And so at that point, it's just like, well, we can't not shoot this. We can't get back here. Like this is it. And so we set up all the lights, did some tests, just handed Dave my guitar. I was like, we have one shot at this. Don't mess it up. Walked back, and so the guitar you see him smash in the film is my personal guitar, and he laid into it. He popped that thing. It was great, but it was a really rough way because when I came home that day, I was visiting my parents, and they were like, congratulations. Like, how does it feel? You just did this. Is such a milestone for you. This is amazing. And I'm answering their questions. I'm like, yeah. But as I'm talking to my dad, like, I know that sooner or later, his eyes are going to find their way to that empty guitar stand in the corner. And eventually he does. And I remember he sees it, and like, that part in Braveheart when William Wallace finds out that Robert the Bruce betrayed him, and he's on the field, and you see it in his eyes.
Yeah.
It was like, it wasn't sadness. It was like betrayal in my dad's. And he's such a positive guy, but even he was like, he got it. Like he knew why I had to do it, but he was crushed, and he just had to walk away. And at that point I was like, Dad, I'm going to fix it. Like, I'm going to fix that guitar. And he's like, you don't fix that. I was like, son of a bitch, I've done harder things, and I am not going out.
I just filmed a movie.
I was like, I am not going out on this note. And so I kept all the pieces of that guitar. I brought them home, and then I just started like piecing them back together. inch by inch, putting like reinforcing the back with like paint stirrers from Home Depot, doing a lot of wood gluing, reinforcing the inside. I got the body back together. I sanded off all the finish. I filled the cracks with wood glue and pour filler, refinished it, put strings on it, and I fixed that guitar. I put that guitar back together, and it played. And I played a song when we premiered the film for the investors. I played a song with that guitar that had been broken, where the lyrics are, my, oh my Lord, I just can't hardly wait. We've been broken in the hardest way. The long night's over, and I'm starting to believe I'm not as broken as some made me out to be. And so that guitar itself became like a metaphor for the movie. Yeah, I think I might have it here. I can show you later.
Yeah, please do. I think that keep the guitar. It's going to be $1 million guitar, and I'll tell you why. It's a metaphor for the movie. Yeah. One, but think about how full circle that just went. You know, like your dad gave you something that means a lot to you. You're working on something that means a lot to you. Mm-hmm. You know, and we go back to engineering versus filmmaking. That was a pivotal moment that your dad backed you on.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, like he supported you. I want you to work as hard, if not harder at this, than you would for this engineering. And then here comes this moment where you have to make another difficult decision. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And the fact that you put it back together and it works. We're talking the theme of, picking up all the pieces. And you ever heard there's a story or something about in China, they have these teacups, and when they break, they fill them with gold and put them back together.
My sister actually has a necklace like that. It's gold joinery. I forget what the word is, but yeah, it's when you repair it like that, it's actually stronger than it was,
and it's more beautiful.
Yeah,
and it's worth more because now you have gold.
Yep.
And I think that's a metaphor for life. It's like life will knock you down. It will, put you at a point where now you have to pick up the pieces. Mm-hmm. And if you see through that and the beauty and where that can take you, because think about this: can you grow if you are comfortable?
No.
They don't go in the same room.
Good timber does not grow with ease. The harder wind, the stronger trees.
Amen. Yeah. Think about that. It's like if you aren't pushed in life, if you aren't tested, you will never grow. Mm-hmm. In fighting. If you never fight a good fighter, are you going to progress? Probably not. In sports, if you never play a good team and you're just trampling over everyone, when you go play a good team, you're going to get destroyed.
Yeah.
If you're never pushed to the point where you have to now get out of your comfort zone and force yourself to grow. There was a study, my buddy James talked about, they grew these trees in this dome, this controlled environment, no wind, no external elements. They grew these trees. And as soon as they introduced it to the elements, they folded because they were never tested as they were growing. They were never pushed. They were never. So once you added the external elements, these trees folded and cracked. But when you go to the middle of a forest and these trees are hundreds of feet high, and there's storms, there's winds, and they remain.
Yeah.
It's because they've been tested throughout.
I think there's a poem by Edgar Albert Guest I quoted a piece of there. It's called Good Timber, and it starts with the tree that never had to fight for its share of rain and sun and light, never became a forest king, but lived and died a scrubby thing. And the whole poem is it's one of my favorites.
You're a very smart man. But yeah, it's crazy, that guitar metaphor. Like I'm stuck on that. The fact that it's that guitar.
And I remember my dad was sitting up there in the family when I gave it back to him. I showed it to him. That was a special moment. And I etched in a custom quote around burned in actually quote from the Lord of the Rings, which is a piece of the poem. It says, "All that is gold does not glitter. Not all those who wander are lost. The old that is strong does not wither. Deep roots are not touched by the frost. From the ashes a fire shall be woken. A light from the shadows shall spring. Reforged shall be blade that was broken. The crownless again shall be king."
Bro. Oh, dude, that is dope. That is I want to ask you what's next, but I don't want to know just yet because there's so much we have to before we get into that. How tough you have this beautiful film, these metaphors, these lessons, and you have this finished product, and now you need the world to see it. How do you do that? How do you get on Amazon Prime and YouTube, and how do you relinquish this thing that you've bled over, sweat over, fought over, and now you have to? How tough was that to like say this is now done? Mm-hmm. It's ready. It's ready to be released.
It was a whole new world because, you know, in film school, they teach you how to make the film, but they really don't teach you anything about the distribution landscape. And that's not necessarily negligence on the part of a film school, but that's, you know, with the rate at which you have to think about, like 4 years ago, how would you normally watch a movie? It probably wasn't the same you did it now. There probably wasn't the same streaming service. It wasn't the same type of service. It might not be on the same device. You know, hell, some of us is still using DVDs back then. And now, like, you know, look at the way that it changes.
For the children, that is circular, that holds memory, and you put it into just for my. It's
that weird circle that you see on the like save button, yeah. But yeah, so it's such a rapidly evolving landscape that. So for us, we had the film, and we knew that if you want to get someone's attention with a film, there's two ways to do that. Is one, you'd have a famous person in it, like if you have Tom Cruise in your movie. It could be him watching paint dry for an hour and a half, and someone would buy that movie just because it's got his name. People are going to watch it because it's him. If you don't have Tom Cruise, really the only other way is to have your film do really well in reputable film festivals. So film festivals are where, like, you know, you submit a film and then they're a curated bunch that are selected based on their quality or how well they reflect the festival. So if you have, you know, okay, there's no one I know from this film, but it played at South by Southwest. It won this award at Cannes. You know, it was on the LA Top 100, whatever. That's kind of like a stamp of approval. Like, okay, I know this film is good because it played at this festival where it actually had some competition. So that was the path for us right away, where we did, once the movie was finished, I built a curated list of, okay, what are some festivals that I think would like this movie? And we submitted the film to a bunch of those. It got into a handful of them, and we essentially just kind of started taking the film to different places around the country. Here in Pittsburgh, in California, in Los Angeles, I think a couple places in Texas and Utah, just to kind of get the film as many like stamps of approval as possible so that distributors would then pay attention to it. Now, we got to the end of our festival run and we had all the stamps, but it's like, what now? And I remember, you know how musicians talk about like a lot of the great ones they all remember like playing to empty venues at points in their life. So one of the film festivals that Beyond the Lake was at, you know, it was playing at the last slot on Saturday night, which is supposed to be the best spot. But I saw when we were playing, and you know, and this is like big Hollywood theaters, like really crisp, the dine-in theaters. You know, it costs money to get in, like, and there's a packed house. There's like 200 people that came to the opening night. It's a big deal. But as soon as I saw when we were playing, I'm like, there's going to be 4 people in our theater. I just know it. And people are like, what are you talking about? Like, it's Saturday night. Like, that's the marquee moment. I was like, no. There's going to be 4 people in our theater. I just know it. And so the first night happens where it's someone else's film. And again, theaters are packed. Everyone's there. It's sold out. Time we get to Beyond the Lake, we're in the theater. We have to watch our film. We can't not. We're sitting there, and there are 3 people sitting next to me. And one guy came in 15 minutes late. And so came all the way across the country to Los Angeles to play the film to 4 people. And like, that's the reality of the festival circuit. And while I was there, at the end of the film, or at the end of the festival, all the other features that played, except for one, all of them got distribution offers from people, from like distributors who were there, who saw the film in theaters and wanted to sign it. All of them got distribution except for Beyond the Lake. It's like that. And I saw some of the other features. I'm like, our movie, I'm not going to compare them, but like this movie definitely has what it takes. If that's the standard, like this movie like is better. But we met some people who worked with a producer's representative who's essentially like an agent for your film. There's the filmmaker and then there's a distributor. A distributor is someone who they know how to like master a film to put it on iTunes and Amazon. They know who to talk to. They have those connections. They know like what you have to do legally and what you have to do prep wise, and what you have to have in place via contracts and via technology and like all those boxes you have to check. That's the distributor. And then there's the filmmaker. A producer's representative is like a middleman between the two. So we got connected with a guy who essentially got our film. He wanted to represent it. And essentially he works for like an engagement fee of about $5,000 and then a 5% kick of like the film in perpetuity. So yeah, again, more money to spend, but this was great because not only did he know people at Netflix and Hulu and HBO and Amazon, but he knows a lot of distributors, and so he was able to advise us once he sent the film out for like to get offers. A bunch of offers came back, and he advised us, okay, this distributor is good because they offer this, this, and this. I'd stay away from this one because, you know, they offer really, really long terms, which makes it, you know, not as good. You know, they don't work as hard in your film if they have a longer term. So he was just able to kind of counsel us on what the best deal was to take. And then once we signed with the distributor Good Deed Entertainment, that's when the real kind of learning process began, because we had the finished film. But to distribute a movie, you need a lot more than that, because you have to set it up for best case success and worst case failure. So you have to set it up not only to be ready for the prime time if the whole world suddenly wants to watch it, but also like if someone decides to sue you, you have to be ready for that too. So on like the legal side, we'll start on the technical side. So when you watch a movie, you watch it in English, right? Most people do, or you watch it in your native language. But so we may be on the like in English. You know, that's how we filmed it. But what you have to do is, say Germany wants to buy your film. They want to have a German dub of it. You actually have to have a version of your movie. It's called an M&E mix, which stands for music and effects. And it is all of the music, all of the atmosphere, all of the sound effects, all of the like, everything that's not dialogue. You have to have a version that has all of that except the dialogue, which doesn't sound too difficult, right? You just take out the dialogue. But say this is happening, say this conversation is happening in a cafe, in like a New York City cafe, and we're having this conversation. What a Foley artist, that's like an audio editor, what they have to do is they have to take this dialogue that's full of our voices, but then it's also got cars, and it's got coffee cups clinking, and it's got horns, and it's got an AC going off above us, and it's got people walking by, and it's got the door opening. They have to take that audio, they have to strip out everything except the dialogue to have just an isolated dialogue track, and then they have to build all that sound from scratch. They have to do like, for the feet walking by, they have to like, you know, for all the coffee shops, they got to put in a new air conditioning sound. They got to get Foley of the back street and put that in. They have to build all of the non-dialogue sound from scratch so that you can just, if you do want to have a dialogueless version of the film, you can isolate just the audio and pull it out, and then you have a clean version. So that means like most of the sound in Beyond the Lake is rebuilt. Like it's someone like putting in new, it's not what you see there. Also, you know, you have to do ADR sometimes where like if the audio is not super clean, you bring in the actors like in a studio like this, and you have them watch their lips and like say their words again. But that's really, you have to act again. Like, and as a director, like I got to get my actors back into that same emotional space. That has to happen. Same thing with like the dialogue, the no dialogue version. You have to have a textless version of your movie. Like if there's ever important text on your film, you have to have a version of that where there's no text. So
like
if there's
the text messages.
Yeah, so there has to be a version of that with blank bubbles. And if there's like an important sign on the wall behind you that your characters will reference, you have to like erase the text from that sign so that you could put like German text in there if need be. So there's so many things like that you know, we had to prep, and we knew that was coming. So like we like did that work in advance. We were ready for it, but it was still a ton of work. And then, you know, on the legal side, you have to have like errors and omissions insurance, and you have all these copyright releases and, you know, title reports and copyright and chain of title and, you know, COT and affidavits and all this stuff legally to make sure that your film is squared away. You know, my summer reading was literally a book this thick before I made the movie. It was a book this thick just called Contracts for the Film and Television Industry. And it was just boilerplate contracts. And we used a lot of those to like for the actors and for the crowd releases. But we still had to do so much like paperwork and legal work to get it ready for prime time. And then you got to like test the movie. It's got to go through quality checks. So you send it to a company that brushes through the film with a fine tooth comb. And it's like so it's like the bit rate of this shot dips below 300 megabits per second right here. You have to fix this shot. Or there's a black dot here that cuts in. Take out this red light. You have a dead pixel on quadrant 4 of the screen. This audio is too noisy. Like, do better audio. And there's like standards for like, okay, if you want your film just on YouTube, it can be kind of shaky. But if you want it on iTunes and Amazon, like it has to pass the quality checks. And you only have 3 rounds. And if you like have to go longer than that, you got to pay more. So like, yeah, there's so many things that you have to hoops to jump through to make sure that your film is solid. There's no errors. It's legally prepped. It's, you know, they've got all the versions they need of different shots and formats, and all the same thing has to happen with the trailer too. You know, you have to have a main trailer, then a 90-second trailer. And that's even before things like promotion, where, you know, the best film in the world is not going to do anything if no one knows it exists. So so many promotional things have to happen, and getting all that additional content, doing test screenings for people and getting audience testimonials and interactions that we're gonna start posting. And I've filmed breakdowns video where I break down videos where I go through like, here's how we shot this, like all of that stuff. Getting it to a distributor is hard enough. And the way it works for them is like the days are gone where you sell a film to a distributor. Like no one's gonna, unless it has a big name in it, nobody's gonna buy your movie outright anymore. Well, okay, that's not necessarily true. So distribution, there are 3 levels of getting a film distributed. There's 3 like kind of types of ways to watch a movie, and that's TVOD, AVOD, and SVOD. So TVOD stands for transactional video on demand. This is anywhere where you would like pay per view of a movie. So like if you saw it in a theater, or you bought a DVD, or you bought the film on iTunes and Amazon, which you should, that would be considered TVOD. Like you buy it or you rent it and you watch it. That's how it works. That's like level 1. And really,
so I'm TVOD. I TVOD it.
You TVODing it right now. That's
okay.
Right. And that's where that's where you make the most money per view of the film. Like it's a good place to be, but anybody can kind of get there. Like there's some really bad movies you can watch on TVOD, comedically bad. You've probably watched a couple yourself.
That's why I had no idea the intricacies of like your film's done, and then you think that's the hard part.
Yeah.
Navigating everything else. So how do these bad movies like slip through that?
Well, so the bad movie, anyone can put a bad movie on iTunes, because of the way it works is like your distributor, they take 30%, and then the distribution platform takes another 30% of the film. So like even if it only makes, $1,000, if you have a really bad movie that only makes $1,000, it's still a $300 paycheck for iTunes, and they're not doing anything. So like anybody can be on TVOD with anything. Okay. And the quality checks, they don't really matter. Like that was like, you could have a terrible movie with all those errors and you could still, cause it's basically, it's pay to play. Like you have to spend a lot of money to get it there.
Kind of like the music industry where you can just submit your music.
Anybody can put anything on Spotify with like CD Baby. That's what we used. So that's level 1. Now level 2 is AVOD, which stands for advertising video on demand. This is where you can watch a movie for free, but you watch it with ads. So things like Pluto, Tubi, Freevee, ironically, like old school television where you watch on a channel with commercials, that's AVOD. And as a filmmaker, I make money based on, I make like a certain amount of cents on how many ads somebody watches throughout the film. That not everybody can get on, because again, they're making money based on how long people watch these films and if it keeps their attention. So it has to be good. So that's like the level 2. And we're in negotiations right now with different AVOD platforms to get the film on there. And it's nice because the better your film does on an AVOD platform, you can actually get better deals. Like more people will want to advertise on your movie if a lot of people are watching it. And there are AVOD channels, like it's the fastest growing distribution space right now. Like there's new kinds of those platforms popping up all the time. That's AVOD. And again, you still don't make a lot of money for that. The last tier, like the golden ticket, is SVOD, which stands for subscription video on demand. So this is your Netflix, this is your HBO, this is your Amazon Prime Video. This is where you pay a subscription fee monthly, and then you can watch anything in that library. This is the hardest place to get to, because your movie either has to be, it doesn't matter if it's good, it has to be successful. Like Amazon has to know, like, okay, if we buy this movie, people are going to want to watch it just based on, they already know it exists. Like you already know it's good. So that's the hardest spot to get to. And that's, you have to do really well on TVOD. You have to do really well on AVOD and had prolonged success to even catch the attention of people like of the Netflix, the HBO, the Amazon Prime. Now there are a lot of platforms are doing though is they're a hybrid. So Amazon, they have Amazon Prime Video, and there's just Amazon Video, or they're the same thing. But if you ever pay to watch, if you so you rented Beyond the Lake on Amazon, that's a TVOD sale. Whereas if you ever see a movie that says free with Prime or included with Prime, that is their SVOD tier. Same thing like iTunes. You can buy a movie on iTunes, you rent it. But if it's something where you can watch it for free with Apple TV Plus that you subscribe to, that's their SVOD. So that's actually good for Hulu. Hulu does the same thing. That's good for filmmakers too, because you can, now you're already on the radar of those people, which is nice. But that's a very, very long journey, and just kind of learning and it's changing so much. Like in 5 years, that might not even be the case anymore. We may see that it might be that AVOD becomes the new like king, and then SVOD is like a secondary tier. Like I had distributors tell me, they're like, 2 years ago we could have made you 125. Oh, and the last thing, it's SVOD. that they say, okay, we will pay you, $200K for 2 years exclusivity on this movie. SVOD sales are when you actually can make money up front. Other than that, you have to have actually people watch your film in order to get paid for it. So yeah, that's the current distribution space, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. That's not even getting into like how theatrical plays into it and how you can pre-sell certain films if you want to make like that's how a lot of films used to get funded was theaters and theater chains would buy in advance like essentially 3,000 tickets. They're like, all right, we will give you 3,000 tickets to this movie. Here's $30,000 on the assumption that people were going to come see the movie and they would make that money back. That's not really a thing anymore unless it's like a big studio movie. Oh, yeah, so really the indie distribution game is make the film as good as humanly possible, get it into festivals where you can meet the right people and just, you could say, okay, this film played here, here, and here. At least we know it's good. Then, find a sales rep or a producer's rep like Circus Road who repped our film because he helped us get into the conversations with the distributors. Yeah.
So you mentioned like having that, like to back up a little bit, having to have a certain analog or a certain like audio, so it can play in Germany. How does AI play in that? Can that like help? Does that help you? Is it accurate because AI is so new, or is it something you're just like, fuck AI?
Well, AI is and this is the controversy right now is that people think that AI is moving from being a tool to being a craftsman. Like we've been using AI for years. It's been in like, little Photoshop tools and, like when you when you listen to Spotify on shuffle and you listen to a radio station and it's like, oh man, all these songs sound so similar. Like I love how I'm just discovering new music. Like, what do you think that is? That's not some intern back at Spotify. Like, okay, he likes Kesha and this and that. I'm going to recommend that. Like, no, that's AI.
That intern, I'd have that intern mind blown because I have Vanessa Carlton and then DMX.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah.
How you gonna do that one?
Yeah. Like you ever been shopping? You have a dream one night about like, I need new hubcaps for my car. And then you see ads for hubcaps on your internet browser. Like, that's AI. So AI has been there. Generative AI and AI are kind of two different things. So, I love AI tools. And everyone loves them. They clean up audio. They can, stabilize video. Those have been around for a while. Generative AI, that's where a lot of the controversy is now because they're going to say, like, oh, it's going to replace writers. Like you can, or it's going to replace like artists, painters, drawers. AI generated art. You've probably seen it a million times. It's getting better and better and better. But my take on this is different than I think where a lot of people are. And my take is that this is generative AI. It's coming. Whether you like it or not, it's coming. It's going to get here. And so you have two options. You can learn to ride the wave and you can learn how to use it to your advantage, or you can get crushed by it. But you can't sit on the bench. And so my encouragement to people is always learn how to use this to your advantage. Learn how, learn how to make AI eliminate the busy work, the grunt work. Like I'm sure for a guy like you who has to run the logistics of a podcast, any AI that will tell you, okay, do my scheduling for me, or it'll do my payment processing for me. That stuff is huge. When it comes to generative AI, okay, so first UFC, right? You had all these UFC fighters, or you had all these martial artists from different styles and backgrounds. And you had the karate guy, you had the kickboxer, you had the sumo guy, you had the wrestler. And
don't forget the jiu-jitsu guy.
Well, so that's what the story's about. Who wins that? It's this little 130-pound Brazilian guy that no one's ever heard of from an art that no one's ever seen. He comes in, he wipes the floor with everybody. UFC 1, in addition to, opening up a whole new sport, can you imagine like what a shot in the arm that must have been for traditional martial arts? Like all the people who were teaching karate and kung fu and taekwondo in those McDojos because again, there was no competition. They had never had anyone challenge their beliefs about like, oh, this is how you fight. They'd never had anyone challenge that because no one really had the ability to either. And that's how you had just such ridiculous stuff being taught in these traditional martial arts schools because, yeah, there was no like, they lost sight of what it really meant to be a martial artist, and they fell in love with themselves and their own like technique and style. And it became more about, oh, I say this is martial arts, therefore it is, not this is martial arts because I could beat someone in a fight with it. Hoist Gracie comes in and he provides the reality check for a lot of quote unquote martial artists who had just become, McDojos and people who weren't real fighters. AI generated art, or AI, we'll say AI artists, even though it's just AI. AI artists are going to be to modern art what Hoist Gracie was to martial arts.
Ooh.
Where you have a lot of people, have you ever heard someone say like art is subjective, or art for art's sake, or like, oh, I don't think this is like, or, you've seen like freaking modern art where someone like pops a balloon of paint on a page.
I was just having this conversation a couple days ago, and I was like, dude, this art that's coming out, it's money laundering. Because for you to throw a paintbrush and say that's $1 million painting, someone's willing to buy it for $1 million, and then they can stow it away and get an insurance policy for $500,000 off this $1 million painting. It's
in some free port somewhere where they're not paying taxes.
Yeah. Who said it's worth $1 million?
So this is the important conversation, and I hope that AI forces people to have this conversation, because what you have to do really is we got to go back and we got to say, okay, well then what is art? Nobody likes that question because, well, for a plethora of reasons, but like, let's put a working, and that's what everyone says. But here's the thing. It's like, okay, so we'll get there in a second. So the working definition of art that I use is that art is a recreation of reality according to an artist's metaphysical value judgments. That's a very fancy way of saying art is you recreating the world the way you see it. Like with what you see is important, what you think matters, what you think is good and something to emulate versus what you think is, it's basically a way of you saying like, this is what's real about the world, and this is what I think is fake or an illusion or not worth saying. Like if you give two directors the same script, they will make it two different ways. If you have a director who, believes in the power of, positive thinking, and who's like a go-getter and believes that like, your work matters and that you can make a difference in the world and that, you can work and you can find success, he's going to take that script and, of like a guy, say the script is like a guy, works, say it's the Pursuit of Happiness script, right? He's going to take that script. He's going to make the Pursuit of Happiness. You give a director who is, believes that like, oh, everyone's out to get him and the little guy never has any chances. And, there's people in big corporations conspiring against him and nothing he does matters. And, there's no hope anywhere. He's going to take that script and he's going to make that same movie. But for Chris, the main character, it's not going to mean anything. Or, he's going to get screwed by someone, or he's going to sit down and be like, but it wasn't worth it. Or he's going to lose the relationship with his son. All that to say, like, based on what you believe about the way the world is and about what matters and what's important and what is real and what is worthy, it's going to affect the art you make. So with that definition in mind, that art is a recreation of reality according to an artist's, beliefs, value judgments. Take something like The Lord of the Rings. That is friendship, fellowship. That's a concretization of a theme. The theme of friendship, of fellowship, of deliverance, of, the idea that if you keep fighting and you believe long enough and you don't give up hope, that deliverance will come and that you will win against unbeatable odds. Like that is the director and the writers. They're taking that theme of like hope and they're giving it concrete form. It was something more than just what it was. Now, what are we doing today? Most people today, they do it backwards where, for the Lord of the Rings, they say, okay, we have this idea of hope, of deliverance, of friendship. We're going to extrapolate that and we're going to make it into something concrete. We're going to take it from something very abstract and we're going to give it a concrete form, which is this movie. Modern art, what they're trying to do is they're trying to, and even modern, just bad art in general, they're trying to reverse that. They're trying to create something and then they're trying to look into it and find something in it, like, oh, they're going to find a theme or find a meaning. That's why much of modern art is, okay, here's a pile of sticks. What do you see?
What's that type of art called? There's a name for it, it's escaping me.
Most of it's modern art, but it could be abstract art.
Abstract,
yeah.
that's what I was thinking.
And that's the danger, because like I said, real great art, when you're doing something that matters, is you're taking an abstract theme like, love, friendship, diligence, perseverance, strength, confidence, fear. Those are all abstractions. You can't touch them. They don't look like anything. You can't taste it. What great art does is it takes that abstract thing and it gives it a concrete form. So chaos and disillusion, and it doesn't just work in like, the positive sense. Take something like chaos, disillusionment, terror, horror. Those are all abstractions. You look at Pablo Picasso's painting Guernica. It's fairly iconic, but if you look at it, it's, cubist art where you're seeing you're seeing like the same scene, but from multiple perspectives at the same time. And it's weird and it's unsettling. And that's a concrete form of those themes he was trying to capture. Whereas nowadays, people are making something. They're like, oh, I'm going to pop a balloon of paint on the wall. Or yeah, I'm going to throw this brush that's going to make something. And they're trying to say, okay, let's take it back to the abstract. Rather than going from abstract to concrete, they're trying to reverse that. And they're saying, let's take something concrete, let's break it down, and let's put it back to just colors and sounds and randomness. And that doesn't work, you know? And then they're putting the impetus on you then to find the meaning in that, rather than the way it's supposed to be is I have this idea of meaning I want to communicate, and I'm going to bring it to fruition in a way that's beautiful and that touches you. And and so bringing this all back to AI, if what we've turned art into is something where you just draw something, or you think something, or you say something, or you paint something random, and then if it's just lines on a page or pixels, and then, you know, your audience finds some good meaning in it, like, oh, art is subjective, right? So someone can say that's great. Okay, that's great. That's fine. But if you're just making lines on a page, or if you're just putting random pixels together, what is there in that an AI can't do? If you're turning art, it's like AI is not taking over art. We surrendered art to AI. You know, Ooh. AI didn't become a better artist. We cheapened art. You know, like no one has ever taken an old Nokia car phone and been like, oh, they don't make phones like that anymore. But think about how many times we say like, oh, this movie from the 70s, oh, damn, they don't make them like that anymore. Art, unlike technology, unlike, you know, so many things, art is in a lot of ways regressed because we've tried to open art up into something that anyone can do. You know, we don't want to hurt anyone's feelings like, oh, this you know, disgusting painting that this man-child did, like, oh, it's art. You know, it's subjective. No one can tell you it's bad. No one can tell you it's not fulfilling, you know, the primary function of what painting's supposed to be, which is surrealism in a lot of ways. Like, we don't want to tell you that. So instead of saying you need to rise to art, we have brought art down to the level of like the lowest and, you know, basest person. And so now rather than getting incredible artists, we're just getting art that's so limp and so impotent,
watered down.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah, if you turn art into something that a robot can do, and then you complain that robots are taking over art, it's like, well, yeah, what'd you expect? No AI is ever going to write a Beethoven symphony. No AI is ever going to make an Oppenheimer script. No, it could be, and this is probably if there's one thing at the core of who I am as a storyteller, there's this story. It's called The Great Divorce by C.S. Lewis, and the premise of the story is very short, but its premise is that this group of ghosts who are living in hell, they get the chance to take a bus ride and visit the outskirts of heaven for 90 minutes. And while they're there, a bunch of angels from heaven come down from like the mainlands of heaven, and they try to convince the ghosts to stay. And the story is the author walking around, listening into little vignettes of conversations, and watching how, almost without exception, every single ghost chooses to go back to hell rather than stay in heaven. And there's this one conversation between an angel and a ghost, both of whom were painters on Earth, and now they're like in the afterlife. And the angel says something which is so brilliant to this painter ghost. He's like, because the painter's saying like, oh, he's talking about style and about his brush strokes and about all the technical aspects of his art. And the angel says, he's like, when you started painting, light itself was your first love, and you loved paint only as a means of telling about art. Or I'm sorry, you love paint only as a means of telling about light. And that's why you were so successful at first, because you caught a glimpse of the heavenly landscape, and your paintings were so successful because through your work, people could experience that heavenly landscape too. You caught a glimpse of the divine, and you were able to communicate it through your work. But as you grew up, you forgot that, and you started, thinking about just paint for paint's sake. And, it became less about what you were telling and more about how you told it and what your style was. Like every artist, but for grace, is drawn away from love of the thing he tells to love of the telling. And until like at the end, it becomes like, people can't be interested in God or honor or love or justice or all these themes we talk about. They can't really be interested in those at all, but only what we say about them. And that, if there's one thing that kind of changed the way I saw art, is what am I saying? Like, am I capturing a glimpse of the divine? And am I giving people a glimpse through my work of something more than just the chemicals and the day-to-day of life? And that, to wrap up the AI segment, if you're an artist and you want to think like, how do I defend myself against AI? How do I, be unreplicable by an AI artist? It's about rediscovering what it means to be a real human being. Because, and whether or not you're like atheist or religious, there are moments in life that produce a sense of like awe and wonder in us and make us feel like we're tapping into something that's bigger than just us. Whether you call it God or whatever, like that makes us inherently human. And that's the one thing, that feeling that we get, that's like there's something more to life than just the day-to-day or just the chemicals of our bodies. That feeling makes us human, and that's the one thing that an AI will never be able to replicate. They will never know what it's like. An AI will never know what it's like for a father to hold his son that's just been born. They'll be able to draw that picture, but they won't know what it feels like to him. They'll be able to know what it looks like to stand at the Grand Canyon, but they will never know what it feels like for a human to feel so big and so small all at the same time. They will know what it means to show an athlete on a podium raising his hand in victory, but they will never know, the AI will never know what it feels like in that moment when you've worked so hard and sacrificed so much and all the complex emotion. Like an AI will never understand how somebody could laugh and cry at the same time. That stuff, that is what art is supposed to be about. That's what I'm getting chills just saying it.
Dude, this is wild.
That is the kind of stuff that art can do and should do, and we've just forgotten that. And it takes knowing that as a person before you know it as an artist. If we look at art, we're basically we're worried about robots and cyborgs taking over art. We're basically cyborgs already. How much of people's lives is scrolling through TikTok and watching TV and looking at a screen doing this all day? Like, there's no human experience in there. Like if you have forgotten what it means to have those experiences that I've talked about, if you don't have those moments of raw humanity and just experiencing something bigger than you on a weekly basis, you're going to forget, and then you're not going to be able to communicate it. And so it makes sense that, people have, that we've diminished as artists because we've diminished as people, and we don't have, those experiences. We don't have that character, that glory, that something in us that's so much more than just day-to-day life. We've forgotten that. And so the step to redeeming art, we got to redeem people first. We got to turn people away from being cyborgs who are just, live for technology and for the latest click and chasing the algorithm, and more into what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to really be human? And get that back, because that is the one thing that AI is never going to be able to do. And that's how you beat AI as an artist. You do something it can't do, which is a real expression of those larger than life moments that, that you have to be human to know.
Well, damn. No, I totally agree with you. We as a society have think about what it takes to be exceptional now. Mm-hmm. It's not much work, unfortunately.
Yeah.
People look at me and they're like, dude, you look great. You must be an athlete. It's like, I go to the gym 5 days a week. Oh, yeah, I can never. That's the secret. I go to the gym 5 days a week. I don't do anything special. I don't do anything extra. I follow the same routine. But that's crazy to people that I can fit 2 hours at the gym 5 days a week.
Well, there's other element too of I feel like with my generation especially, but it's seeping in everybody, is that I feel like we're not as, we want the results of we want to look jacked without
the process.
Without embodying the life of something that it takes to become jacked. That's what if you've read the book Atomic Habits, it's a great read.
I listened to it on
same.
Audible.
Yeah, same. Dude, audiobooks are the way to go. People sleep on audiobooks.
That's what I listen to at the gym. I don't listen to music. I don't podcasts or audiobooks.
I listen to 12 books a month. I read 12 books a month, and I couldn't do that without audiobooks.
You got me there.
Yeah.
You got me there.
But yeah, they say it's, if you want to build a habit, it's not about saying I'm going to it's not saying I'm going to get to 450. It's not saying I'm going to become I'm sorry, I'm saying it right. The way to get to 450 bench press is not to say, I'm going to lift more weights. I'm going to become a person who benches every day. I'm going to embody the lifestyle of the life I want, and then I'm going to let the results take care of themselves. But in Instagram culture, where all we care about is the final result.
Outcome driven.
Yeah, it's outcome driven. It's not process driven, and that's the root of the problem.
And you ever heard the saying "embrace the suck"?
Yeah, I've been telling that to my dad recently.
It's so cliche if you just skip over it, but it's so true. If You become process driven, process oriented. You start appreciating the process of whatever outcome you want. You want to be a film director. There's going to be times where you're in your basement working 30 hours in 2 days and slept 5 hours, and you have to sacrifice some like that. You have to embrace that, because that process, there's learning in that, there's drive in that, there's character building in that. Like, you have to embrace that if you want to be the big film director.
Yeah.
But we get so hung up on, I want to have a feature film, or I want to be 220 and solid with no cake belly, which I have, forgive me. I want to be a jiu-jitsu all-American athlete. Well, you have to be in the gym every day training. You have to be. We don't want to do the process.
Yeah.
We see the guys and girls on Instagram who we see the finished product. Oh, look at this. Oh, look at that. I want to be that guy. Are you doing what that person does?
Yeah. And it's hard too, because like, you say, I want to learn piano. You're going to be inundated with people who have been playing the piano for 10 years. And then they're going to be offering, buy my piano course and we'll teach you how to do this to this in 30 days. And this instant information is great in so many ways. It makes you great if you want to learn something, because you can learn quicker, but it gives you the idea that learning should happen as quick as discovery happens. Like, you can find a program that's going to take that, by a person that can play like a maestro, but then when you start playing, you realize, I have to suck for like 10 years before I'm even like passably good at this. Like, no, I'm just going to scroll on to the next. I'm going to find another thing a different thing I can learn like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that takes away a lot of the passion behind life and art. We find these robots walking around with no purpose, no sense, no meaning.
Yeah.
And it's like, what are you investing yourself into?
Yeah.
How can you be poured into if you're not pouring?
And you know what's actually really funny about this conversation? We're talking, as we talk about like putting in the reps and getting better at something. What AI does, what generative AI, this has been happening for like decades. AI, you don't write AI to make art or to make music. You have to train AI. So you actually have to, if you want AI to get good at like drawing photos of a sunset, you actually have to like feed an AI millions and millions and millions of photos of different sunsets from around the world, from different angles at different like levels of luminance and different focal lengths and different exposures and different frame rates, specifically for video too. And the AI actually studies that, and the AI practices making pictures, and then but like faces. So like the AI, if you say like, draw me a photo of Ish Lopez doing a podcast, it'll draw you, and maybe its face is a little wonky. You'll actually tell it, okay, the eyes are not correct. Both eyes should be open and they have to be on the same level. And the AI will do it again, and it'll like try to fix the eyes.
That's interesting.
It's funny that like AI is a harder worker than most people. Like
think about the work taken.
Yeah, think about the decades that AI has been training to become a better artist that you haven't. Like, of course it's doing better than you. It's outworking you.
or even though like people will sit there and input into AI instead of just doing it themselves. Like, you're doing work to have someone else do it for you. Just
and that brings up the conversation about originality. And if because all that AI can't create anything new. It can just sample millions and millions and millions of images or whatever. I'm using images because that's relevant to me. It can't draw a new image. It can only like sample different images and copy what's already been done. Now it can do a lot of that, but we say, that's not fair, because me as an artist, I am original. It's like, well, are you? How original are you? How much of what you write is you say, I like what he did, I'm going to copy that. Or like freaking like trend chasing, when everyone is, trying to make like a video a certain way. Like, there is a type of ad right now that plays really well. It's the, like, stop doing this or stop scrolling, or like the clickbait. Everyone's trying to copy and make the same type of video.
You see it on TikTok.
Yeah, you see it on TikTok. Trends. And everyone's trying to be the same. They're trying to just copy what other cool people are doing. So again, it goes back to that conversation of, okay, what separates you from an AI? An AI just samples what's being done and copies it, and combines it with other things. But like, if you're not different than that, then like, what are you complaining about? Like, what are you? That then goes back to what I said earlier. It's like, what makes you different than a robot? And for, I think, a lot of people, and this goes back to what I was saying about jiu-jitsu and the first UFC. Nobody wants to admit that. Nobody wants to say, I've forgotten what it means to be human. Nobody wants to say, I'm really not as original as I thought. Nobody wants to say, like, I don't have emotional experiences. No one wants to say I'm basically a cyborg now. Like, that's a hard sell for people. And it's easier to just vilify AI and say, oh, it's, it's going to destroy. We have to destroy it before it destroys us. Or we can't let this happen.
It.
You say you destroyed yourself.
We already
man.
did it.
And all it's doing is calling attention to that, because the best, and I'm not the only one who thinks this. Like really great artists realize that a real artist will never be outdone by AI. The quality of the work will never be outdone. And the originality, again, because an AI, it will never know what it means to have those transcendent experiences. And that's an artist's job, is to transcend.
If you're so passionate about something and that's what you want to be doing, you have no competition.
Yeah.
Because you're not looking outward. Mm-hmm. You're looking inward. And when I find those competitions, like, how many podcasts I've helped set up because I've started one and people come, I want to start one. I can easily be like, no, you figure it out yourself. Why? Like, if you push something out that I'm threatened by, I need to be better at what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I need to, okay, how can I better this? Like, how can I make a better listening or a visual experience for people listening and watching? Like, you need to be inward focused and why you're doing this. Like, what is the real purpose of this? I want to highlight people's stories. I would have never met you if I never started this podcast. Yeah. And you have blown my mind in more ways than I can even count right now. So given that passion and drive, like, what's next for you? What can people expect for you coming out?
Yeah. Well, the long-term goal for my career, and this may surprise people, especially if you've only seen Beyond the Lake, is actually to dramatically redeem the action movie genre. Like, that is my love, is not just like exactly, but it's not strict action films. I'm not as keen on that. What I really love are films that, have a really great characters and a really compelling story and really complex themes and make you think and make you feel something, that also like kick ass and have sweet fights and shootouts and explosions. And those movies are few and far between, but I call it like, it's like a gourmet hamburger, or like,
I love hamburgers.
Yeah. But, and like, if you have like a really good one, like there's a difference between McDonald's and like, I don't know, the Jerome Bettis Grill or whatever, a nice burger restaurant, or like a salted caramel. You can only eat so much caramel before you're like, this is too sweet. Same thing. You can only eat so much like salty food before you're like, I need some water. But you put salty sweet together, it's just, you can never get enough, because the extremes, they balance each other out. So I love action films with like really gritty, intense action that makes you go like, oh, or like, yes, that also have those moments that touch your soul. So movies like, Warrior, Pittsburgh classic, was shot here. The Dark Knight, Logan, Hacksaw Ridge, Skyfall, Terminator 2, Top Gun Maverick, great recent example.
Oh, such a good movie. I've watched it 7 times, lucky number 7 times, and every time it's like the first time. I'm like,
it's so good. And Top Gun 1, it had all the effects and stuff, but it didn't have that, the core of the story there is like a guy, scared he doesn't belong anymore, or like trying to be in a world that doesn't want him anymore, and how you have to, but he's needed. Like that moment before they go on the last mission on the air carrier where that one guy's like, Maverick, you're where you belong. Like that, that story has emotional weight. Exactly.
Goosies.
That's the key for me, is emotional weight on the action genre. And so the reason I actually made Beyond the Lake, which is not an action movie at all, is I wanted to show people that I can tell a story that stands on its own 2 legs, like dramatically. Like, I don't need action to prove that I'm a good filmmaker. Like, I want to show that I can tell a story that's compelling just with its own drama, so that when I put the action back on top of that, you get that masterpiece. And the film the project that is going to do that is something I'm writing. I want to turn it into either a feature or a series called Of Monsters and Men, which is a fantasy action film, kind of like in the vein of The Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones, about a disfigured and disavowed knight who's framed for the assassination of the king. And he accepts a chance at absolution by hunting and killing a murderous shapeshifter. Essentially, he's told by like a seedy politician, he's like, hey, listen, you're facing execution. Your head's going to roll regardless. I can't help you there. But there's this shapeshifter that's been terrorizing our town. It's killed some people. You go find that shapeshifter. You get it to look like you and cut off its head, and we'll send that head in your place, and you can go free. And so the knight, he takes it. He's like, all right, I'm going to do this. But as his hunt evolves and as he gets deeper into the forest, like looking for it, he starts to realize that this shapeshifter might not be quite the monster it's made out to be. It might be just as much a scapegoat as he is. And so with time running out and his life on the line, he's wrestling with both external monsters and internal ones as he struggles to discern between man and monster, both in his surroundings and in himself. Because as he's hunting this monster that turns out to be a lot more of a man than he thought, he's also waking up the monster in himself. And it's so it's a cool character piece.
Bro, what? I want to watch this movie.
And well, and we almost we started making it. And we talk about failures. This is probably the most, for objectively, the biggest failure I've ever had was the first time we tried to make of Monsters and Men. It was going to be my second feature. I'd just done Beyond the Lake. I had a lot of momentum. I wrote it. It was great. People loved it. I had his whole cast and crew sign on. They're all super passionate about it. I had a bigger cast and crew. I had more resources. I was filming in Pittsburgh, closer to home. We had a successful crowdfunding campaign this time. We got $12,000 like that because people saw Beyond the Lake. They're like, yeah, you're going to do this. Found this amazing location in Peters Lake Park where, like North American forests, they look very North American. There's nothing really magical about them, but there's this spot in Peters Township where like somebody in the 1900s, they transplanted a bunch of like Norwegian timber in Peters Township. And there's just basically, it's like you cross a bridge and you walk into Narnia. Like the trees are all different. It looks like something right out of a fairy tale. So I found that. We got to shoot there. I got a great DP who had this great connections and all this gear. It was looking like it was going to be fantastic. And I had a super powerful script at the core. I'm like, yeah, this is the thing. This is going to be my showcase, my calling card, the action film with the great drama and the great story. And like, once we started filming, just everything started going wrong. And everything usually goes wrong on a film set. Like that's par for the course. But usually, eventually, like you catch the win, you catch a break, you get some wind in your sails, and then you're able to like outrun that stuff. That just never happened with us. Like the first day, my makeup, I had like the main character, he has like half his face burned off, so I had a prosthetic, and it kept on peeling off my neck. And the park was closed and the bathrooms were locked. And then there was a miscommunication with the rental house and our lenses didn't fit the camera. And it was super foggy in the morning, but we had to wait till that cleared up. And then, a guy who I'd had to recast on short notice, like I brought in an actor I hadn't worked with to fill a hole that somebody left, was not able to communicate with him well. And he kind of started freaking out because he was scared that everything was going wrong and it was going to look bad on him. And then, just so much stuff kept going wrong to the point that we got to the end of the first day. And I was like, we don't even have anything usable. Like the whole day was a wash. So then we like paused. We're like, all right, we're going to take 5 days. We're going to just kind of get our feet back under us. We'll figure out how to shoot this stuff later. We come back and we're trying to shoot like the finale. It's this massive fight scene where it's 2 guys versus 4. It's this massive, intricate like sword fight. It's really cool. It's the hardest thing. And I'm like, oh, I hope this better works. And when we shoot that day and it goes great. I'm like, finally, like now we got our momentum. Now the rest of the film will go well. But the next day, that guy who I brought in, and I don't want to get into too many details, but like this guy who none of us had worked with before kind of shut down the whole production to speak his mind, we'll say. And basically, like I said, things go wrong on a film set. It just happened. I think what was happening was he was looking at all the things that were falling apart, and he was saying like, this is your fault personally, like my fault. Whereas like I'm wearing 18 different hats, and like, no, some of this stuff just happens. And the degree to which we're pivoting and keeping moving is actually really impressive. I did get the best backhanded compliment I've ever got from this guy. He's like, the only reason I'm still here is because this script is too good to walk away from. Like,
thank you, sir.
It's like, thank you, I guess.
Yeah, thank you.
And it was hard. Like he literally said this, like, I'm only here because I want this character on my reel. Like, I don't care about anything else. I'm just here for me. And when somebody tells you that, you're like, okay, like, I don't know what else. Like, where do we go from this? So we had to let him go and recast it because, you can't make a film with somebody like that. And then, the weather started coming in and it got hail and there was sleet and snow. It went from like 70 and sunny to like 40 degrees.
Typical Pittsburgh weather. And
we were filming outdoors. And it got to the point, like, we literally had to bring in bags of topsoil from my garage to make dry ground for the stunt performers to do their stuff on. Then people started getting pneumonia. And then, we lost a crew member. And then we lost the location because it got rained out and flooded. It got to the point we were a week away from the end of the film of like our schedule, and we had like 2% of the movie shot. And so at this point, I just realized like, well, I'm sorry, not this. When we had that big shutdown from the actor, that's when I was like, we're not going to make this movie. Like this not going to happen. And so at that point, I pivoted to, okay, we're going to take the last week and we're going to just put all our effort and resources into the first 2 scenes. Like we can at least use it as a proof of concept. We have to come out of this with something. We were supposed to have a second feature film, and I'm going to be lucky if I have 2 scenes. So we shut down everything but the last 4 days, which are like the biggest. There are location shoots. They have the most people. They have the most locations, the most effects. There's a fight scene, and we have half our crew, like no money left. And they're outdoor scenes that take place at night outdoors in November in Pittsburgh, so it's freezing. And thankfully, those 4 days where we shot the first 2 scenes, they went really, really well. And, we got great scenes. And one of the stunt guys who I was newer to the group, he's like, yo, man, this is like the most fun I've ever had on set. And I was like, I don't know if I said it, but I was like, you don't know how much that means to me right now. Like, I needed to hear that. So we got a great short film, and that's on my YouTube channel, actually. It's just Of Monsters and Men. And so now the goal is, if I learned anything from that project, it's that I've kind of hit the limit of what I can do at an indie level. And if I'm going to keep growing, because I don't want to go backwards. Like, I know what I'm capable of from a directing standpoint. I need to find more production power. Like, I need to find the producers and, the production companies and the people who can handle like the money and the logistics. So I'm going to be a part of that as a director anyway, but I was trying to do everything. I was trying to do all the office work, all the spreadsheets, all the planning, all the logistics. It was just too much. So I want to use this as like a calling card for, hey, there's a great story here. There's a great, script, a great series. Now I just need to find the people who can give that the production power it deserves so that I can, continue to lead it from a directing standpoint, but also just like, it needs some staying power. Cause like with an indie film, you have 1 or 2 things go wrong, you're kind of done. And so, what a production company does, or a bigger budget, or a real producer, is they give it the resources and the time and the money that it takes to do it. So yeah, that's kind of my goal right now and I'm living in Atlanta for that reason. Like, I want to find people and meet people who know those people, who are those people, to say, hey, I've got, a fantastic script. It's super marketable, super sellable, great action, great characters. People are going to want to see it. They're going to want to be in it. I just need, the production resources and capacities and the people to like back me as a director and as a filmmaker. So that's where I am right now with that, and just having to be patient because I tried to do it on the indie level and it just didn't work. And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting the same results. So yeah, I just I'm still writing it. I'm still like fleshing out the series, still telling people about it. Now it's just a matter of finding the right person to be like the production head of it.
I'm excited for you. I'm excited for that. Before we cut out, what does success look like to you in this context, in this industry? What does success look like for me? Yeah, for you.
My goal has always been like the day that I can pay all my bills and live, relatively comfortably, and not have the day that I don't have to worry about money because like I'm making money as a filmmaker. That is all I need. Like, and not as in like, oh, I'm making films and I'm working a side hustle to like actually pay the bills. Like, I want my narrative film work, not commercials, not music videos. I want my narrative films to make enough money that is how I can pay the bills. And like, I have enough income coming from that I can live. And I can say that, yeah, I am a working filmmaker who supports himself doing this. And if I can just live comfortably and have, like my tennis racket, a jiu-jitsu membership somewhere, and maybe a Tesla, because I love Teslas. That's my, like, people ask like, what's your dream car? I'm like, a Tesla. I'm like, no, your dream car. I'm like, no, it's a Tesla. That's it. That's all I want. That's all I want.
So as a wise man once said, as long as the outcome is income.
Oh, I like that. I like that. Yeah, it's freedom, and I think that's what a lot of entrepreneurs do. The things they do is not like, if I wanted to have a lot of money, I would have stayed in engineering and I'd be there by now. I wanted to have like a certain life of like, I want to have adventures. I want to go make things. I want to, no one's ever going to remember the size of your bank account at the end of your life, but they are going to remember if you touched their soul at one point. And for me, that's almost a bigger part of it. Is I want to touch people's soul and remember, like I want them to see one of my movies and it make them like want to be a better person or want to strive for something better or, feel like they're alive for like maybe once in their life. That's success for me.
Wow. Well, man, I wish you the best of luck. I think you're well on your way as long as you continue what you're doing. I'm going to finish that movie. And where can people find you and your work if they want to get to know you more?
So I'm pretty much everywhere at Filming Dom on YouTube, on Instagram, Facebook. I don't have a TikTok because, China, but those 3 places. Yeah, go to my website, filmingdom.com. That's where you can see the bulk of my work. You can learn about, how to find more stuff. And yeah, that's where you can watch all the films, watch all the breakdowns, the behind the scenes. There's a lot of good stuff on that website.
I'm going to have to check that out. And where can they find Beyond the Lake?
You can watch Beyond the Lake on Amazon Video or on iTunes or on YouTube. You just search Beyond the Lake. If you just go to like the store on Beyond the Lake or on Amazon, just search Beyond the Lake. You'll see right there. Buy it, watch it, and if you leave a review, that is the most helpful thing you can do to get the film out to more people. Like ratings and reviews, like 5 stars and a review is what boosts it in the algorithm more. So that's what helps more people find the film. So yeah, watch it and review it, please.
Well, that's what I'm going to go do now. I'm going to go finish it and review it.
Right.
Thank you for jumping on the Relentless project, bro. It's been amazing.
Thank you.
Best of luck to you, man.
Can I end with one more poem that's a Relentless poem?
Absolutely.
Right, so this is a personal one for me because we talk about how much you have to fail in order to succeed. And there's this poem called Defeat, and it goes like this. Defeat, my solitude and my aloofness. You are dearer to me than 1,000 triumphs, and sweeter to my heart than all world glory. Defeat, my boldness and my self-knowledge and my defiance. Through you I know that I am yet young and swift of foot, and not to be trapped by withering laurels. And in you I have found aloneness, and the joy of being shunned and scorned. Defeat, my shining sword and shield. In your eyes I have read that to be enthroned is to be enslaved, and to be understood is to be leveled down, and to be grasped is but to reach one's fullness, and like a ripe fruit fall and be consumed. Defeat, my bold companion. You shall hear my songs and my cries and my silences. And none but you shall speak to me of the beating of wings and the urging of seas and of mountains that burn in the night. And you alone shall climb my steep and rocky soul. Defeat, my deathless courage. You and I will laugh together at the storm, and together we will dig graves for all that die in us, and we shall stand in the sun with a will, and we shall be dangerous.
If that don't make you want to take over a small country, I don't know what will. Where is that from?
That's a poem by Khalil Gibran. He's a Lebanese American poet. He's a very good one for like people that have gone through it. He's just really in touch with that part. Yeah,
I'm stealing that. I'm going to dig graves for everything that dies within me.
Yeah,
bro. Thank you so much for jumping on.
Thanks for letting me on, man.
Of course. Fun. This is Dominic Porcari, and I'm Ish, and this is the Relentless Project.
Right
Later.
on.